The morning I came home from my brother's place in Sudbury, I noticed the driveway first. There was a second car parked in it. A white SUV I didn't recognize, sitting exactly where I usually put my truck. I told myself it was nothing. My son had probably borrowed something from a neighbor or had someone over. I'd been gone 11 days. People come and go. I grabbed my bag from the back seat and walked up the front steps of the house I'd owned for 31 years. The same house where my wife Lorraine and I brought our son home from the hospital. The same house where she spent her last winter, sitting by the bay window in the kitchen, watching the birds at the feeders she'd hung on the maple tree out back. I'd kept that feeder filled every single week since she passed. Some things you just do. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Something synthetic. A plug-in air freshener, the kind that's supposed to smell like clean linen, but never quite does. Lorraine had always hated those things. She said they just covered up the smell of a real home. I stood in the entryway for a moment, not moving, just breathing it in, and felt something shift in my chest. I couldn't name it yet. Dad, my son Marcus, came around the corner from the kitchen, smiling wide. He looked good, rested. He'd put on a little weight, which told me someone had been cooking real meals. "You're back early. How was Uncle Phil?" "His hip's better," I said. "Stairs are still giving him trouble, but he's managing." Marcus nodded. He had his hands in his pockets and was rocking slightly on his heels, which was something he did when he was nervous. I noticed, but I let it go. "Where's Tessa?" I asked. "His wife." They'd been with me since the previous spring. Just temporary, they'd said. Just until they got their finances sorted and found something in their budget. The rental market in Barrie had gone sideways, and I had the room, and Marcus was my son, and so I said yes. Of course I said yes. "She's upstairs," Marcus said. "She's been doing some organizing while you were away, getting things sorted." I didn't think much of it. I was tired from the drive, and my back was stiff, and I wanted a cup of tea and my chair. I set my bag down and walked down the hall toward the bedroom. My bedroom door was closed. I turned the handle and pushed it open. The room I walked into was not my room. The bed was different. A taller platform bed, dark wood, none of the warmth of the old maple frame Lorraine and I had bought at a furniture place outside of Collingwood 20-some years ago. Gone. The nightstands were gone too, replaced with matching modern pieces with little wireless chargers sitting on top. My reading lamp, the one with the adjustable arm I'd had since my 40s, was nowhere. The walls had been repainted. I'd had them a warm cream. Now they were some shade of gray blue that looked like the inside of a dentist's office. Lorraine's perfume bottles were gone from the dresser. The photo of her that I kept on the left nightstand. Gone. On the new nightstand, there was a face cream and a phone charger, and a book I didn't recognize. I stood in the doorway for a long moment. My ears were ringing. "Do you like it?" Tessa's voice came from behind me. I turned slowly. She was leaning against the wall in the hallway, arms crossed, pleasant expression on her face, like she was waiting for a compliment on a new haircut. "What did you do?" I said. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "We redecorated," she said, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "Marcus and I talked about it. This room is better for us. It has the ensuite and more closet space. You can take the guest room. It's a perfectly good room, and honestly, it's better for someone your age not to be all the way at the end of the hall." "Someone your age? Where is Lorraine's photo?" I said. She blinked. "I put some things in boxes. They're in the basement." "Where is my bed?" "We donated it. It was quite old, and the mattress." "You donated my bed. It was for the best." She smiled, but it was thin. "This is better for everyone, Harold. We're going to be here for a while, and we need a proper space. The guest room has everything you need. Harold, not Dad, not even Mr. Vance. Harold, like I was a tenant she was tolerating." I looked past her down the hall to where Marcus was standing, saying nothing. My son. My 34-year-old son, who I had taught to ride a bike in this driveway, who I had driven to hockey practice at 5:30 in the morning every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 years, who I had helped move 3 times in the last decade without ever once complaining or asking for anything in return. He was looking at the floor. "Marcus," I said. He looked up. "Did you know about this before I left?" A pause. That pause was all I needed. "We thought it would be a nice surprise," he said. "A fresh start. The room was always a bit." "I want you both downstairs in 10 minutes," I said. I walked to the guest room and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed. A single bed, the mattress decent enough, but narrow, and the window faced the north side of the house where the light came in gray all day, and I pressed my palms flat on my thighs and breathed. I was not going to cry. I was too angry to cry. But I was also too old to yell, because yelling gets you nowhere and wears out your heart, and I had learned that much. What I was clear. Clearer than I had been about anything in a long time. I reached for my phone and opened my contacts. I found the number for my lawyer, a woman I'd been using for property matters since the mid-90s. I sent her a text, "Need to meet this week. Urgent. Call me when you can." Then I sat for a moment and thought about what Lorraine would have said. She would have said, "Don't react. Respond." She was good at that. Measured. She used to say that the people who act out of anger get a moment of satisfaction and then a lifetime of consequences. I had tried to be more like her, and I had mostly failed, but today felt like a day to try again. I went downstairs. They were sitting at the kitchen table, which was also different. They'd moved the chairs, replaced the cloth placemats with some woven ones I'd never seen. Small things, but suddenly I saw them everywhere. A new dish rack. Different hand soap by the sink. Tessa had been moving through this house like a tide, quietly claiming it, and I had been too trusting or too tired or too wrapped up in grief to notice. I sat down across from them. "I'm going to say this once," I said, "and I'd like you to listen without interrupting." Tessa opened her mouth. I held up one finger. She closed it. "This house belongs to me," I said. "It was never offered to either of you. You were given a room, temporarily, while you got yourselves sorted. That was the agreement. In 11 days, without my knowledge and without my permission, you have removed my furniture, donated property that was not yours to donate, repainted a room, and moved into the master bedroom of my home. You have also, it seems, made yourself comfortable rearranging the rest of my house." I paused. "That ends today." Marcus leaned forward. "Dad, we were just trying to." I said once, I told him. He said back. "I've contacted my lawyer," I said. "I want my furniture, specifically Lorraine's photo and her perfume bottles and my reading lamp, located and returned to me. If the bed has genuinely been donated and cannot be recovered, that will be part of a conversation about restitution. The master bedroom will be returned to me. I will give you 2 weeks to make arrangements to sleep in the guest room or elsewhere, and I will give you 60 days to find your own housing." I looked at both of them. Those are not negotiable. Tessa's face had gone very still. That pleasant expression was completely gone. "You're being dramatic," she said. "We're family. This is my house," I said again. "Those 2 words are doing a lot of work in this conversation, and I'd like you to let them." She looked at Marcus. He was quiet. "Marcus," she said, with an edge in her voice that I recognized. The edge that meant, "Fix this." And I watched my son. I watched him sit with it for a moment, and I saw something move across his face. Something complicated, some tug of war between where he'd come from and where he'd ended up. And I held my breath without meaning to. He said very quietly, "She's right, Tess, this is his house." I won't pretend that fixed everything. It didn't. There was a long, ugly silence, and then Tessa pushed back her chair and went upstairs, and Marcus and I sat at that kitchen table without speaking for a while. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a chickadee landed on the feeder. "I didn't know she was going to paint the room," he said finally. "She said she was doing some tidying." "And the bed?" He was quiet for a moment. "She said it was old and a hazard. I should have asked more questions." "Yes," I said, "you should have." He looked at me then, and he had the same eyes he'd had at 9 years old when he broke something he shouldn't have touched, and came to tell me about it himself, ashamed but honest about it, which I had always respected, even when the news was bad. "I'm sorry, Dad." I nodded. I wasn't ready to say it was fine, because it wasn't. But I believed he meant it, and that mattered. My lawyer called the next morning. She came by the house 2 days later with a letter. Formal, not aggressive, but absolutely clear. It outlined the terms of their stay as a temporary arrangement, the expectation that the property would be returned to its prior condition or compensation made, and the 60-day notice of their need to vacate. She was matter-of-fact about it the way she always was, and I was grateful for that. I didn't want drama. I wanted documentation. Tessa barely spoke to me for the first week. That suited me fine. I moved back into my bedroom. The platform bed was still there because they hadn't had time to change it back yet, and I slept on it with my own pillow, and tried not to think too hard about where my maple frame had gone. Marcus reached out to the donation center and managed to recover a few things, including Lorraine's photo, which had been in a box in the basement just as Tessa said, wrapped in a kitchen towel like it was something that could be wrapped up and put away. I put the photo back on the nightstand. I'm not a sentimental man. I've never been comfortable with that word, but I sat on the edge of that bed, and I held that frame, and I looked at her face. The photo from our trip to Cape Breton in 2003, her laughing at something just off camera, her hair going in every direction because of the wind. And I talked to her. I told her what happened. I told her how it was going to be handled. I told her I was all right. The 60 days passed. Tessa found an apartment in town. Not the neighborhood she wanted, but within their budget, which I suspected was the actual problem all along. She needed more space than they could afford, and somehow that had translated in her mind into taking mine. I have never fully understood that logic, but I have stopped trying. Marcus helped me repaint the bedroom on the last weekend before they left. He didn't suggest a color. He asked me what I wanted, and I said cream, and so we painted it cream, and we didn't talk much, just worked. And at the end of the day, we sat on the back porch with a beer each and watched the light go out of the sky over the back field. I should have handled it better, he said. You should have, I agreed, but you handled it right when it counted. I won't forget that either. There's something strange that happens when you live alone again after you haven't for a while. The silence comes back, and at first it's strange. You notice every small sound, every creak of the house in the cold, every branch against the window. And then it settles, and it's not empty anymore. It's just quiet. And quiet is something I know how to live in. The bird feeder needed filling. I'd let it go during all of it, too distracted, and I could tell the chickadees were disgruntled. I went out on a Tuesday morning in November, frost on the grass, breath visible in the air, and filled the feeder up to the brim. By the time I got back to the kitchen window with my tea, 3 of them were already there. Lorraine would have liked that. I have one child, and I love him, and I think in the end he understood what he had newly let happen. He calls every Sunday now. He came for Christmas, alone. They had separated by October, though that is their story to tell and not mine. I made the turkey the same way I always have, and we watched the game, and it was quiet in the way that Christmas used to be before things got complicated. My house smells like itself again. Coffee in the morning. A little wood smoke. The cedar blocks I keep in the closets. No more synthetic linen. I am 67 years old, and I own my home, and my wife's photo is on the nightstand, and the birds know where to find their breakfast. That is enough. That is, in fact, quite a lot. I keep thinking about that synthetic air freshener. Such a small thing, but that smell, that artificial clean linen smell Lorraine always hated, was the first sign that something had gone wrong while I wasn't looking. Not just with the room, with how I'd been living. Too available, too accommodating, too willing to let things slide because the alternative felt like conflict, and conflict felt like failure. What happened in that house while I was in Sudbury didn't happen overnight. It happened in degrees. A chair moved here, a dish rack replaced there. Small choices that went unchallenged, and so they grew into larger ones. That's usually how it goes. The people who overstep rarely charge through the front door. They come in quietly, a little at a time, and they count on you not noticing, or not saying anything if you do. I noticed. I just said nothing for too long. That's the part I've had to sit with. Not what Tessa did. She made her choices and she lived with the consequences of them, which is how things tend to work out when you act without integrity. What I've had to reckon with is my own role in it. I'd been so focused on being generous, on being the kind of father who doesn't make his son feel like a burden, that I had confused generosity with surrender. They are not the same thing. One comes from strength. The other comes from the fear of being difficult. The day I sat down at that kitchen table and spoke plainly, no raised voice, no threats, just clear words about what was mine and what the terms were going to be, was the day I stopped confusing the two. That took something, not anger. Anger would have been easier. What it took was the willingness to think before I reacted, to understand what I actually wanted from the situation, and then to pursue it calmly and with documentation. My lawyer didn't save me. I had called her before I even walked back downstairs. The thinking had already been done. Marcus surprised me, not because he did the right thing, though he did, but because I had underestimated him. I had assumed that because he hadn't protected me, he wouldn't. People are not always what their worst moment suggests. He painted that room with me. He asked what color I wanted. That matters. What I want to say, if any of this lands the way I mean it to, is that there are 3 things that got me through those 60 days intact. The first was knowing what was right, not in a complicated way, just in the plain sense of, this is my house, I am owed basic respect, and I will not pretend otherwise to keep the peace. The second was thinking clearly instead of reacting. Lorraine used to say that the people who act out of anger get a moment of satisfaction and then a lifetime of consequences. I held on to that. I thought through every step before I took it. The third was not giving up when it felt easier to just let them have the room and disappear into the quiet. Staying present, staying firm, following through. That's the part nobody talks about. Anyone can decide to stand up. The harder thing is to keep standing after the first hard conversation. Tessa's gone now. Marcus and I talk on Sundays. The chickadees are back at the feeder. Whatever it cost, it was worth it.